I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Day before the 4th of July. Glad to be here and glad to have you along today. Wanted to do something special today, considering it is the holiday. It's an important one. And two things I pulled up. One is I wanted to read portions of the Frederick Douglass speech on what the 4th of July means to Black people in America. That's one. But I also wanted to share with you what I thought were excellent remarks made by our current president, President Joe Biden, on Monday, following, the all the conversation, or last week following the conversation around the debate. And so those are two things. Then today we also want to sort of follow up on the Promise Act in Minnesota. So that's some good things. I want to invite you to participate in this conversation. If you have feelings, observations, thoughts, if you want to be part of the program, send an email over to cooper@insightnews.com. We can reach out to you and connect and see if we can get you in the conversation. Things are fairly flexible, fairly open, and I'm available to engage you in the conversation. In fact, I want to. So I thank you who are joining us by any of the various platforms that we use. Thanks to the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA. We call it the Black Press of America. We're streaming live on the YouTube channel of the Black Press of America, and we also stream on the Black Press's Facebook pages. We stream live on Insight News and Al McFarlane Facebook pages as well, and we stream across Twitter or X and LinkedIn. No matter how you're connecting, we value you, we appreciate you, and we thank you, and we want to have this be a conversation between all of us. So if you are so inclined, just click on, make a comment in the comment section, give us your email address, and if we can get to it, we'll send you a link and you can join the conversation. Well, two things. Let's look at the upcoming week's Insight News. We're going to press a little early this week because of the holiday tomorrow, our printer's schedule. But we've got a nice piece on the front page. Cooper, can you pull it up and just sort of share with our audience our front page for upcoming Insight? And that's pretty cool. I think it's a pretty bold statement. This is not printed yet. It's going through the printer today, but I want to share with you what we are doing here at Insight to talk about the awesome situation that we're in behind the Supreme Court's decision to question whether or not a sitting president, in this case Donald Trump, has immunity over what they call or what's not. And why important is that even the 34 counts that he's been convicted on, and that we were expecting a sentence in the next couple of days on, that's been put off because that judge wants to see how the Supreme Court's decision will impact those convictions. Well, we decided to do two things for the upcoming Insight News. We think this idea of the courage of Justice Sotomayor to say that she dissents. She was one of three all liberals who dissented from the majority opinion. And we think that's just powerful and clear, because she calls this and says, are we appointing and allowing a king who's above the law? She says, I dissent. Well, read Insight when it comes out. In fact, you can go online, issue.com/Insight News, and you can see upcoming Monday's paper today, and that includes a synopsis or an edited version of Justice Sotomayor's piece, and it also includes President Biden's response to SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. What I want to do is actually read that, and this is entitled, and it's from the White House website, Remarks by President Biden on Supreme Court's Immunity Ruling. Remarks by President Biden on the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. President says, good evening. The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It is an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it is an office that can test your character because you not only face moments where you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. The nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each, each of us is equal before the law. No one, no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all, for all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it is a dangerous precedent because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law in this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking of the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it was one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now, the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they ask to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It is a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people have to do what the court should have been willing to do, but would not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office of the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president, once again, the presidency to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, that defined the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power would always reside with the people, always. Now, over 20 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that that are going to define the limits of power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of presidential power, as I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent. May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you, and may God protect our troops. Those were the words, the statement from President Joe Biden earlier in the week or last week. Well, interested in what you think, what your thoughts are. And I want to read one more piece at the end of the show today, talking about this question of democracy. But the second piece I'll read is a speech written in, I think, 18, you think of the year. It's a important speech written by Frederick Douglass, written and delivered July 5th, 1852. I'll read excerpts of that when we come back after the current interview. So let me switch, let me pivot. Again, thank you. Love to have your point of view, your thoughts on this issue and on any other issues that are important to you right now as well. Let's see. Steam in my eyeglasses here. Let me bring in my friend and neighbor and colleague and actually relative, Kenya McKnight. She is the leader of Black Women's Wealth Alliance. We talked briefly last week with Kenya about the Promise Act, but we want to take some more time talking about that, what it means, and talk more broadly about her work in creating a vision and real opportunity for Black women's and Black community business and wealth creation. Kenya McKnight Ahad, good afternoon, sister. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm good. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. Just getting ready to chill out for tomorrow, with the
Yeah.
4th of July. But like a lot of African Americans, always at minimum concerned about what it really means, and I want to be awake and aware of the history of our people in this country, the United States, and also be aware and thinking about, what role we have played in making this idea of democracy real, because it has not been real for us.
Mm-hmm.
It has been our tenacity, our resilience, and our perseverance that, and our intellectual and organizing power that has shifted the country towards the truth of the potential of democracy. Absent that, who knows where we'd be? And I
Yeah.
fear that the energy of Trump and the Trumpites, that energy seeks to reverse the clock and put us back into a non-citizen or second-class citizenship status. And I believe we have to say, I dissent, and we have to fight. This is like the thing where it's like the last mile, the last minute, the last bullet, the last person. We got to take this thing to the wire, and we have to win. But that's enough of that. Kenya, how you doing?
No, I mean it's real, and I was thinking as you was talking, and I had been paying attention. I watch the news every day, more national, and also try to keep up with international things because they influence
Mhm.
what's happening locally. And so I think that what makes me want to actually vote this time around, outside of just I know our folks fought for our rights to vote, and that our vote does count, especially at the national levels, at and every level, but certainly it has an impact there too, as well. And I think that the pushback from the Democratic Party on President Biden is really upsetting. And it actually makes me want to vote. And I guess it makes me want to vote even more, because what I know is true, excuse me, is that irregardless of the optics that we're looking at with Biden, the optics, what is perceived as his cognitive health. I mean, look, I'm not as concerned with that. I mean, I feel like when I look at what has happened, what he's done, he's been one of the most progressive
That's right.
presidents that African American people are greatly benefiting from right now, whether we know it or not, in terms of whether it's us directly, like the individual, at a broader scale. When you think about student loan debt, right? We understand that we hold a significant amount of student loan debt.
Right.
And so that's one thing that is benefiting us, advancing the first Black woman to the Supreme Court, advancing as many Black judges across all courts in the state. The first woman vice president is a Black woman. And, there's so many countless things outside of the cultural pieces that he's done and is doing, even with the oil industry and how they try to smoke him out. And he gamed up on them, going to our own reserve and changed the whole game. That pulled us out. I mean, you got to give credit to this man for his genius, even if he's not able to articulate it as clearly, right? The work that he's doing matters, and it does have an impact. It's having it now.
It speaks volumes. The work speaks volumes.
Yeah. Volume. So this is one of those moments where you go, and where you go, and is it about how me feeling good, right? Around how somebody's presenting, or am I really going to pull back the onion and look at, the substance of the work and its impact? And can I also see part of the smoke being that white folks some of them are just scared that this black woman going to be president?
That's a deal. There you go.
It's part of the thing.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And they going tenfold. And I'll close and say, this is part of the struggle people have with the Democratic Party, is the Republicans are united around Trump and his mess, around treason, being a treasonous, criminal, lying, right, disruptive, divisive president that he was, who nearly bankrupted this country, that didn't make front headlines, right? The $2 trillion he ran up the debt of this country higher than any president in history, right? And he gets to sit up there and lie, and it's coded with white supremacy. I mean, I think if I've never seen white supremacy on front display before,
here it is.
It's so bold and loud,
and we feel it.
He's tearing up the court system, the whole, it's crazy that it's even allowed to happen. But Republicans are united around it, right? Democrats are divided around the opposite. That's hard. That here's the substance and everything we talk about: a great president, record unemployment rates for Black people, all kind of stuff, game-changing things that no president has done that he's doing, and they're divided around his optics and cognitive health, the perception of his cognitive health. So you got to wonder, what is this really about? And so my thing is, for us, in terms of making this democracy real for us, look, it's going to take more time, but we've got to preserve what we've already done.
That's right.
Right. And for me, that means getting Joe Biden in. Yeah, we need, forget the parties, all of that. Yeah. We're not there yet. Until then, let's keep doing what's working for us, which is, for me, in this current reality, re-elect Joe Biden. I don't want to elect no other Democrat. This is the man, because we've already seen and we're benefiting from his work. The new person, I have no idea what they are capable of. They need time for that. We know what Joe is. So that's my spiel.
And he knows, and we know, the critical role that we played in general, Black women played in particular, in his success. Without the leadership of Black women, without the support of Black voters, there'd be no Joe Biden. We'd be still living under Trump. And the scary thing is, we're going to
stay the course. We stay in the course.
We stay in the course, but we have to make sure we get our people out. So you and I, when we first connected, Kenya, some years ago, you had asked me to give an endorsing nomination for you, because you were going to run for City Hall, I think, at that time.
City Council,
Fifth Ward, this neighborhood. And so it just tells me that you and I have both been here at the grassroots level from the beginning, and we've never walked away. We stay in the court. And what this conversation is saying, that it's critically important that, just like Kenya McKnight and Al McFarlane, we must stay the course locally for school board elections, for city council, for state legislature, and figure out how to get on the, say, assessment boards, the committees, and the councils that are adjacent to the work that the electeds do. But it's critically important. And the importance is that this is a method and a mechanism for us understanding what the sovereignty of our own voice, for us knowing that our decision, our view, our analysis matters. and that we, in fact, are likely to provide a direction for our community and for the country that is healing, that is expansive, that is inclusive, and that reveals the strength of diversity, that respects everybody, that doesn't keep anybody out, but says we've all got a part to play in this. That's how we roll, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that fundamentally, we've been the color carpet, if you will, not that we stepped on, but that
That's right.
weaves
We
in,
that's right. A
all the
tapestry. Yep.
fibers of, communities. And,
Yeah.
and that's, just been our pillar as humanitarians that we are, right? It's true to us culturally. I think that, we do have to stay the course, and we have to understand. I often say this is that, look, we're not going to realize everything we need to in our lifetimes, and it's not the point. You and I, there's no way that we can deliver all the work that's needed in our community, right? We're only here to do our part in our times, and in our time, and that part also means that we got to do everything we can to advance to the next level, so that the next wave of people come in and they do their thing and take it to the next level. I mean, this is a continuum, a selfless continuum that is about a futuristic outlook. Because look, if our ancestors were only thinking about their reality in the now that they were in, we wouldn't be here.
That's right.
Right? They knew they wouldn't see where we are today, but they saw that we would see it. And so they put in the effort, right? In spite of everything they were dealing with, to make that, sacrifice so that we could. And that's a thing we have to continue. So stay in the course. It's like, well, it ain't gonna make a difference if you don't want it to. I mean, you may not see the whole difference that it's going to make, but that's not the point. It's not about the difference you and I can see. It's about the difference you and I can make for the next generation to see.
That's right.
So
generations to come. That leads us to the
continue.
question of generational wealth. That's a topic that we're hearing. I love the phrase because it's something that we haven't really talked about, like at the dinner table. I don't think at the water cooler, but it's coming up more and more in everyday conversation. So let me ask you, Kenya McKnight, what are we talking about when we talk about building generational wealth for our people? What's that mean to you?
I mean, to me, it is about having the level of resource that you need to pay for the decisions that you need to make to live the life that you want and need to live through generations at its core. And what assets you build around to support that, right? So you think about if like housing is important to you and you like, I mean, a lot of things are important. Let's just take housing though, to say, I never want to be homeless. And I want to we understand that housing is, half of the expense of our incomes at times. And so, I want to make sure that I relieve future generations of burdens, of my family, of burdens of, having to worry about where they're going to live. Because foundationally, you can't build much if you don't have a solid foundation of your household, like where you live. You got to, and so it's part of that security that you want to provide yourself and your family through generations. You might own some real estate that you pay and take care of and, set it up in a trust, that it will always remain as part of a resource for your family to have a place to live. Granted, they're doing everything they need to do. You set up your threshold. So to me, it's about, making investments for the future. The same thing we was talking about. We're the wealth of our ancestors. They made that investment. So it can go across many different things, but it is about investing in the future at its core. But everyone is going to have a different, perspective. But it is about the future. It's not the now. We work now to invest and build in the future so that we have resources, assets, and things that are around. And it's not just monetary. It's not just, real estate, land, it's culture, it's values, right? It's sometimes jewelry, it's recipes, it's, You know what I'm saying? All those things that we
It's
want.
ways of knowing, ways of looking at things, and ways of understanding the world, and
Mhm.
being confident that your analysis of what exists is a proper foundation for the work that you're willing to do to create the future. And it says that you are responsible for authoring the future. You're a co-author of what will be, and it gives you both the right and the responsibility to bring your voice and your vision, your knowledge and your power to the conversation, no matter where you are. That's what I think.
Yeah, and while you can't guarantee the success of that future that you invest in, because it's left up to the folks who, are the inheritors of that, of
Mhm.
what they're going to choose to do with it. We have the responsibility to guarantee that it exists. It exists, and we hope that we teach and cultivate them enough to expand it beyond what they inherited.
Let me shout out to Anura C. Asser. Brother Anura, thank you for your thumbs up. We appreciate you and the work that you do at Black Ink. And also shout out to our friend Michelle, who's out on the East Coast, who's here every day. Sister Michelle, thank you so much for your presence and your support of the Conversation with Al McFarlane. So let's sit in the work of the Black Women's Wealth Alliance. I know you got only so much time, but I always want to refresh people on what is the Black Women's Wealth Alliance, where that vision comes from. How do you articulate that vision, and what outcomes you seek by the work that you do and by the team you've assembled to make a difference?
My vision is bigger than my life, I tell you that.
That's a good
Um,
one. That's a good place to start. That's a great place to start. What a wonderful comment.
yeah. You know what? The work is, I'm in my 10th year.
Mhm.
So August makes 10 years that we've been around, and it's really amazing, like, just to still be around in this work and doing it, and only feeling like I'm just now getting ready to do the work of it, at its core,
Well,
which I'm excited about.
let me jump in, sister. So 10 years, congratulations, number one. And we're rolling up on 50 years for
Wow.
Insight News and McFarland Media, because we started Insight in 1974, right? And just what you just said is so true, because I tell people, and mostly I tell myself, everything up to now has been preparation and practice. The work is about to begin right now. Preparation. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, yeah, congratulations. And that's what I'm saying. That's legacy, right? And I'm just excited about kind of just where I am. So the Black Women's
Mhm.
Wealth Alliance, we started this journey. I would say I started this journey in probably 2003,
Mhm.
as a young person trying to create this intergenerational network of Black women who would take care of each other. And I called this Spoke at that time, Sisters Pot of Knowledge Evolving. I might have been 23 or 24. I had very little clue, but I was in the Nation of Islam. So I was really inspired at that time about, just kind of, they call me Sister King, So I was really inspired about the power of Black women and how we work with each other to teach and build each other through generations. And so that's what I started. And I just sort of went away from it and got involved in the community. I became a teacher, just all this other stuff, and totally had forgotten all about that work. And just I met another young lady. Students would often come to me in my work to learn, to shadow me, etc. When I worked at Neon in 2007, and one young lady came to Dr. Brittany Lewis. She came to shadow me, at which I ended up being her mentor for 9 years, letting her shadow me in my work. And she was a Black feminist, and I certainly wasn't interested in Black feminism. At that time, I saw it as people typically do, as, anti-Black men, anti-breaking up the family, just all this other stuff. And it just didn't fare well with me, but I was still working with her as a student. But she
Mhm.
was very persistent about Black women. And I'm like, girl, ain't no difference. We all out here. Um, but it struck me over time. I was like, okay. Because, I had to figure out how I was going to really support this student, and not like shut her down, right?
Mhm.
Because of her very keen focus on Black women. And then I'm a Black woman. So it really took me somewhere over maybe took about 3 years for me to break. And then I said, you know what? All right. So I was like, you're right. Let me look into this more. And I began to look, and my uncle always told me, like, you need to work with Black women. I'd be like, man, I'm the tomboy. I don't even deal with women that much. I don't like the girly stuff, just all the catfighting. Like, I've just never been into the girly feminineness. And so it really took something from me to get to this place to really work with women, to be honest. And this young lady was a big part of that conversion. And then my uncle passed. Then, of course, sometimes when people pass, you think about, the things they say the most to you. And his biggest thing was, you need to work with Black women. And so that, of course, began to, be at the front of my mind. And I was at the time preparing to do an internship at Oakland at Policy Link under my Bush Fellowship in 2014. And a couple days before my flight, I got a message from Nikema Levy-Pounds on LinkedIn, and we've known each other, but we just, we hadn't like connected, but we know and respect each other. And so when she reached out, I'm like, okay, yeah, and she said, God has a message for you. And I need to talk to you in person. So we met up the next day at the cafe, and just in her mouth, what came out was, you need to work with Black women. This with God. And I'm like, oh, boy, wow. She has no idea what had been going on prior to, with my uncle and the young lady, which was more recent at that time. And I said, okay, I got it. Message. I received the assignment,
I'm listening now. No, yeah. Okay.
So I got on the flight, and the next day, and I was there at Policy Link, focusing on social equity because I had worked in transportation for a while. So I was working with the White House, with the Policy Link around creating economic development plans across 144 regions to make sure they had racial equity strategies and ways to invest in, Black and other underrepresented communities. So that was my work there for almost 6 months, and it was great. But in the background of that work, I was doing a lot of research on Black women and Black economics and things like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, there was a whole bunch there that was confusing. And so I came back. When I came back to Minneapolis, I organized, I probably reached out to about 30, 40 people in my network to have meetings so I can talk about what I found and understand what they thought about working with Black women. And so 20 women showed up. And we met at the McDonald's on West Broadway, right up the street. So we met for 6 months straight. They wanted to meet every week. We did a few months at McDonald's, and then the rest we were at my apartment complex. And that was the beginning. And it was the Black Women's Business Alliance at that time. Where we realized that all of the things that I had researched was right there in Minnesota, right amongst this network of women. And that, we were very clear about wealth was nowhere in our focus at that time. We didn't have the language. We were just talking about it as business owners and et cetera. And so, we try to do a little bit among ourselves, but we weren't able to move beyond where we were, honestly, because most of us needed everything from the table before we can even build the table and get some there. So it was weighing it down too much, but it was a lot of ideas, a lot of conversation, a lot of foundation is what I call it. And I stepped away after a while because, you can only meet and talk so much. And it just, and started trying to do something and I created the Black Women's Wealth Alliance because I began to learn more about wealth, what that meant, the language. And I saw that it was a bigger picture than what we were even talking about. And that business was a part of it, but that there was something different that was needed. But I needed a little bit more research. And so we got a grant from Cura. And I worked with that young lady again, Dr. Lewis, to create Minnesota's first report on the economic status of Black women. Wow. And I was shocked that it was nothing prior to that. The Women's Foundation has since continued the foundation of what we began, which is great. But that's where we started. And from there, we've done a lot of things trying to figure out what to do. But ultimately, it was about the fact that at that time in Minnesota, nearly 80% of Black women were the primary breadwinners of their household, despite their marital status, number one. That was like, whoa, right? Because it wasn't met with equal opportunity, is what we saw in our report, that like nearly 35% of the jobs we held at that time were concentrated in low wage occupations, right? We had not received less than 15% of capital lending for our businesses, but we were leading new business startups in Minnesota. And we had to disaggregate the data and distinguish no one had paid us that much attention, any attention at that time, to even know that we were drowning. Wow. And, you know, we were drowning while we were out here doing there was no eyes on who we are and what we needed. So we started a journey in that, and it wasn't popular. It was divisive to a lot of people. Again, like how I started with the young lady, that's what I experienced. It was like, what you mean? You know, and so it was a lot. And we did a lot of work over the years to try to figure out what to do as volunteers, mostly because I didn't have a salary or anything until 2020, you know. But yeah, so it had been a process, but we did a lot of amazing creative initiatives to get at four things. One is, what we also understood is Black women also control nearly 60% of the total Black dollar nationally. That's a lot of power and influence. And so for us, there was no way that Black women would, one, control that amount of money, but yet not have the right strategies in place to retain it and to use it to grow wealth. So it was about leveraging the power, the opportunity, and the responsibility of Black women to redirect the Black dollar. And at that time, the buying power was also $1.3 trillion. So this is a lot of money, and we keep less than 50% of it. So you think about this woman, and we're looking like, on one end, we're struggling, and on the other end, we have all this buying power, and she controls most of it, whether she's married or single. So a lot of money is slipping through the hands of Black women. This still remains the truth today, right? And so and I think that there's just a lot of unconsciousness about this power that we have financially and the opportunity we have ahead to build Black wealth, but also the responsibility we have, right? As members of our families and our households, our communities, and as leaders, like, we have a responsibility to really be thoughtful about how we redirect our money to build wealth in our communities, in our families, and for ourselves. But we have to understand what wealth is first. What is it? So this is where our wealth education comes in at, right? And, you know, you have to understand the concept, tools, and strategies of wealth. We're the world, you know, is focused on financial literacy. We care about wealth literacy, because you can't manage you can manage your checkbooks and all of that, but if you don't have no money, or you don't know how to build new income streams, we don't want you to manage from where you are. That's fine. We want you to have a vision, but to understand what wealth is and how you can really, because maybe home ownership isn't for you, but what does your life insurance look like, right? So we want to look at how wealth looks for the individual who works a job, who's in school, who has a business, who might be on disability and something like that. There's a way that everybody can do something. But if you don't understand what wealth is, and you don't know what tools are available to you and how to use the money you have to invest in it to grow, not only for your now, but for the future. For all these babies, because 50% of Black babies in Minnesota are born under poverty. And so this is about our future. And she has a role that she has to play, Black women, making a difference if she controls this much money. So that's our primary thing, is about grabbing the attention of Black women, providing her with the education she needs, the skills, the tools, and we invest some resources into her capacity to not only dream, but to realize them, because we understand the impact of her will impact every household she's a part of,
That's
the
right.
communities and networks, etc. So I'll stop there. I thought it's been
Well,
going.
that's powerful and clear. But let me ask you then to sit with this idea of delineating the distinction between, say, a job or business creation and wealth. When you discovered, when and how did uh, the difference become clear to you? Because you brought this energy for helping Black women be successful in businesses first,
Mhm.
but then over a period of time, you discovered that the missing element was a consciousness about wealth, and that business fits within the overall movement for wealth creation. How did that awareness come to you, and how do you distinguish or define the two things differently today?
Once I became more educated about what wealth is beyond just owning a home, as that's the primary tool that we're, I mean, I bought a building before I bought a house, right? And
Hmm.
so, and I have more wealth, owning my business, and some of the assets I have beyond home ownership, right? I'm probably more stable than most homeowners in that way because of the different tools that I have. And so I think that, and that's the point. That's what I want to teach. And so
Hmm.
I think that we have to understand what wealth is, how it works, and the tools, right? And so that once I got an understanding of that, because I don't know it all, it's a whole big old game, but I know enough um, for now. And so once I got an understanding of that, then I began to make different decisions. Like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Let me see. What does my IRA look like? What is okay, I can have more than one life insurance. Oh, there's term, whole life, there's this. Oh, I can have this other type of insurance too. Oh, my company, this and that, how I set my business up as a wealth tool. Oh, I also am an employee of my company. And so like, how do okay, I can offer benefits as an employee. There are other benefits I can get, 401k. There's a lot of ways to double down on this. My short, long-term disability, all these different types of insurances and things that are wealth tools, right? And so you have to think about them. They're wealth tools because if something happened to you in your job, you only got so much PTO, right?
Hmm.
So, but if you have these other insurances that kick in, right, you don't lose it. These are tools, and so it's all about what you understand wealth to be, how it works, and then the tools. And so from there, I got to say, oh, I see. Okay. So this is not just about entrepreneurship, although you can build wealth as a business owner, depending on how you set your business up,
Hmm.
right? It's about the infrastructure of it, it's cash flow, all that. Yeah. But ultimately you have to understand it as a wealth tool.
Hmm.
Um, Same thing with work. Like we're in these jobs, and I'm watching people leave their jobs because they don't like it. One, which okay, but two, not exploring their employee benefits packages, right? Like they're there, and I understand. Like I'm trying to distinguish the difference between how we show up culturally, right? As feel people, spiritual people. So we're very in tune with that part of it.
Hmm.
And it's hard to have the capacity sometimes to navigate white supremacy and to move that part of you to the side and stay focused on the goal. Like, I don't care
Mm.
what these people say. Okay. I'm here
Right.
to get my check. I'm gonna do my
That's right.
job because my
That's right.
wealth, you
That's
you
right.
understand that you trying to get to a certain point for
I'm
retirement.
on a mission. I'm on a
Right.
mission, and
And
I can't be
we
stopped.
yeah,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the same levels of endurance
Hmm.
as boomers, in other generations. And so it's the endurance is breaking down through generations. And so it's like we gotta teach emotional intelligence and different tools and help us see it differently. So that we understand how to navigate because we don't have those navigational tools in the same way. So that's about wealth. So these are the things that help me really distinguish when I started looking again at the concept and the tools of wealth and the different strategies and how wealth is built even as a student, how you're making choices about what you know school you're going to and what degree you're, exploring can set you up for wealth or not. And I think maybe I'll just wrap this up and say what really struck me in all of this was my work at the TAB board, the Transportation Advisory Board. I served there for 6 years as their first African American appointee. And I understood there, like I got to experience and see how our business strategies in the Black community from, the general where I worked over north and whatever, were very different from how white communities orientated to business and government. And then the data and the research, when you look at the type of businesses we have, most of them are in healthcare. And a lot are in social service, right? But they're not as many that are aligned with a market strategy. Market strategy of not marketing, but market of where money is actually being made.
That's right.
Right? Tapping into markets and of existing money. And we just don't, there's not a lot of inroads to that. And even when I think about my work, as a person who worked in the business, CDFI business development world for years, right? Under when I worked with Neon and other folks, for that, I realized there's just a misalignment with how we're being taught about business, the way Black folks are getting set up to think and operate in business at that time, opposed to how I really work in the systems and the markets. And there's a misalignment. And
let's stop there because you've got a hard stop.
Oh, okay.
Already gone past your time.
Yeah, I'm just going.
You promised me that you could stay till about 1:45, and I've already taken you past that. I want to respect that, but this is a master class. Thank you so much for sharing both the information and the spirit behind the information, the confidence behind the information that you've been sharing. But we just got to do more of this. I think we have to keep this conversation going and sharing it. This is about documentation. It's about teaching and creating roadmaps for ordinary people to have access to it. I want to thank you, but take a minute to talk about Zura.
Yes.
And promote what you're doing right now so people know how to connect with you and to be part of this flow.
Absolutely. So thank you. And sorry, I can get lost in this world of the work. There's so much to share and teach.
Well, we have to come back and keep doing that,
Yeah. So ultimately BWWA is the mothership. And we've hunkered down on, the wealth creation through the education. We have our foundation where we disseminate grants to organizations and individuals. And then we have now our B Pathways program, which, you'll learn more about for career development. So those are the three things that we center on. And then we have this incubator program through Zara, where we provide, Zara is much more than an incubator, but that's just BWWA's role with Zara. It stands on its own as its own institution. So in 2021, I purchased the 1200 West Broadway building, and I turned it into Zara, which is a holistic wellness, cultural and economic space that centers on holistic wellness as well. So in that, we have an incubator that where about 10 Black women entrepreneurs operate beauty, wellness, and food and retail businesses. Really, for us, it's game changing. What we're doing is just really revitalizing or expanding on the economy, the Northside economy, by providing opportunities for entrepreneurs to provide direct services to the community. That's part of a larger ecosystem of holistic, care and wellness, and some high quality services at that, as well as in the beauty sector. We have a hair restoration center here. We have a couple massage parlors. We have a Himalayan salt room. We have body scrubs, body wash, ionic foot soaks. An apothecary, a lab. We have a variety of things, and we're getting ready to open our cafe called Shantae's Place. And so it's a hub, an ancestral hub, brought to you by, our ancestors. But I'm facilitating this on the north side, and it's important. It's needed. And we have a lot of folks who come and visit and support what we're doing here at Zara.
Can you
Oh,
thank
I
you?
should mention we have a
Go ahead.
free acupuncture and chiropractic clinic out of Zara every Wednesday and Saturday in partnership with the Northwestern Health Sciences University.
Open to your clients or men and women?
Yeah, men and
Everybody?
women. It's open
Okay.
to, so everything we do here is open to both men
Okay.
and women.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
but the clinic is open to everybody. So you can go to zaraus.com and book an appointment, look for free clinic, and you'll find some of the businesses there. It's a landing page, the actual website launch in a couple of weeks, but it's up there for you to at least book.
Super. Kenya McKnight, thank you so very much, and continued success. We'll continue this conversation because we got a lot to say and a lot to do. And as you said, we're just at the beginning, but we're going to get this done.
Yes, sir.
We don't have a
Thank
choice.
you.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll
All
see
right.
you.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful conversation. And I tell people that I met Kenya again. We met in the political arena during one of the precinct caucuses, I think, where she said, would you introduce me and perhaps recommend me as a candidate for city council? And I said, I'd be honored and glad, because I had seen her from a distance and knew that she was intense and committed and just had this inside authority and leadership ability and capability. I recognized that. And then sometime later, I was on a genealogy page, maybe a Facebook page. I am, through my mother's side, a Sykes. Sykes is out of Mississippi. And I'm on the page, and I look up, and there's Kenya on the page. So I called her, said, what you doing on my family's page? She said, what you doing on my family's page? So we related, and that's a beautiful thing. This is when we have to continue to discover each other, discover where we are, who we are to each other, and how we get to be with each other for each other. And that's a critical thing. Well, let me close the show with, as I promised, something that's quite appropriate for today. And I looked up and said, not only was it cool to present the information on Joe Biden, his response to the Supreme Court, his sort of doubling down on the comments made by Justice Sotomayor, and I think Ketanji Brown Jackson is also one of the dissenters who is sounding the alarm about the danger to our system. But this is not new for us. So I have pulled up here, I'm going to just read a couple of parts of it, maybe a page from the beginning and a page from the summary. It's a long document, it's 14 pages. And I've not read it aloud before, so I'm reading it aloud, introducing it to my own ears and sense as I'm sharing it with you as well. I'm going to just make my page a little larger so I can read more clearly. And so this, again, was a document that is dated July 5th, 1852. Frederick Douglass says, Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, he who could address this audience without a quailing sensation has stronger nerves than I have. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day. A feeling has crept over me, quite unfavorable to the exercise of my limited powers of speech. The task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. I know that apologies of this sort are generally considered flat and unmeaning. I trust, however, that mine will not be so considered. Should I seem at ease, my appearance would much misrepresent me. The little experience I have had in addressing public meetings in country schoolhouses avails me nothing on the present occasion. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. This certainly sounds large and out of the common way for me. It is true that I've often had the privilege to speak in this beautiful hall, to address many who now honor me with their presence, but neither their familiar faces, nor the perfect gauge I think I have of Corinthian halls seems to free me from embarrassment. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is, to me, a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude. You will not, therefore, be surprised if, in what I have to say, I evince no elaborate preparation nor grace my speech with any high sounding exordium. With little experience and with less learning, I've been able to throw my thoughts hastily and imperfectly together, and trusting your patient and generous indulgence, I will proceed to lay them before you. Well, that's a hell of a beginning. That's an awesome way to set up a powerful statement. This is a statement by Frederick Douglass, who declares here that he used a few not far in distance from the place where he had been enslaved. Now he's addressing it as a free human being, as a free man, as an abolitionist. So he says, this, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the clay, to the act of your great deliverance, and to the signs and to the wonders associated with that act that day. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your life of a nation, I'm glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. 76 years, though a good old age for a man, is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. 70 is the allotted time for individual men, but nations number their years by thousands. According to this fact, you are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon. The eye of the reformer is met with angry flashes, portending disastrous times, but his heart may well be lighter at the thought that America is young and that she is still in the impressible stage of her existence. May he not hope that high lessons of wisdom, of justice, and truth will yet give direction to her destiny? Were the nation older, the patriot's heart might be sadder, the reformer's brow heavier. It is the future. Its future might be shrouded in gloom, and the hope of its prophets go out in sorrow. There is consolation in the thought that America is young. Great streams are not easily turned from channels worn deep in the course of ages. They may sometimes rise in quiet and stately majesty and inundate the course, inundate the land, refreshing and fertilizing the earth with their mysterious properties. They may also rise in wrath and fury and bear away on their angry waves the accumulated wealth of years of toil and hardship. They, however, gradually flow back to the same old channel and flow on as serenely as ever. But while the river may not be turned aside, it may dry up and leave nothing behind but the withered branch and the unsightly rock to howl in the abyss sweeping wind, the sad tale of departed glory. And so, as with rivers, so with nations. Boy, this is just powerful language. It's wonderful language, beautiful language. And I'm going to sort of go down through, since we're mindful of the time here, to the closing statement. This is a 14-page document. I've read page 1 and page 2. But he concludes, and I'll conclude this. In fact, I'll do 2 parts. One, he says, is subtitled, let's see, And this is a brilliant, I knew of it, but I've never read it directly. The subtitle is The Present. Okay. That my business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and his cause in is the ever living now. Open quote. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead bury, let the dead past bury its dead. Act, act in the living present, hearts within and God overhead. He quotes that probably from music. He says we have to do with the past as we can make it useful to the present and to the future, to all inspiring motives, to noble deeds which can be gained from the past. We are welcome. But now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence. Sidney Smith tells us that men seldom eulogize the wisdom and virtues of their fathers, but to excuse some folly or wickedness of their own. The truth is not a doubtful one. There are illustrations of it near and remote, ancient and modern. It was fashionable hundreds of years ago for the children of Jacob to boast, we have, open quote, Abraham to our father, close quote, when they had long lost Abraham's faith and spirit. That people contented themselves under the shadow of Abraham's great name while they repudiated the deeds which made his name great. Need I remind you that similar thing is being done all over this country today? Need I tell you that the Jews are not only the people who built the tombs of the prophets and garnished all the sepulchres of the righteous? Washington could not die till he had broken the chains of the slaves. Yet his monument is built up by the price of human blood, and the traitors in the bodies of souls of men shout, we have Washington to our father. At last, alas, that it should be so, yet so it is. Well, that's he's setting up the conclusion here. I'm going to skip because of time to the very conclusion of this powerful speech. He, just a second here. Another subtitle, I'll read a paragraph, says the internal slave trade. Take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous just now. Ex-Senator Benton tells us that the price of men was never higher than now. He mentions the fact to show that slavery is in no danger. The trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. It is carried on by the large towns and cities in one half of this confederacy. And millions are pocketed every year by dealers in this horrid traffic. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It's called, in parenthesis here, it says, in contradistinction to the foreign slave trade, close parenthesis, it's called the internal slave trade. It is probably called so too, in order to divert it from the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated. The trade has long been denounced by this government as piracy. It has been denounced with burning words from the high places of the nation as an execrable traffic. To attest it, to put an end to it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of God and of man. The duty to extirpate and destroy it is admitted by even the doctors of divinity. In order to put an end to it, in order to put an end to end it, some of these last have consented that their colored brethren, normally free, should leave this country and establish themselves on the western coast of Africa. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much execration is poured out by Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states passed without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable. Well, you know what? I'm well past the hour. I'm going to come back to this, maybe even if not tomorrow, in the next couple of days, because this is worth getting into, worth hearing. I'm going to stop right there, and that's what I will do tomorrow, I think. If not tomorrow, next week or Friday, continue to read Frederick Douglass's speech on the 4th of July. In the meantime, think about it, and let's stay connected. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.